And Sister Philomena Benedict will be leading us in prayer this morning. Sister Philomena is an English Dominican from the congregation of St. Catherine of Siena. Thank you for being with us, Philomena.
Thank you.
Listening to a webinar or a Zoom meeting.
And
So
can you lead us in prayer?
Yes. This prayer is written by Pope Francis and appeared at the end of his 2015 encyclical Laudato Si. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and Holy Spirit, Amen. All-powerful God, you are present in the universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with your peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and distractions. Touch our hearts, touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light. We thank you for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Sister Philomena. And I think that today that we're going to hear many of the things that are reflected in that prayer in the presentations from our speaker. We're going to begin today with Lisa Sullivan. Lisa is the Senior Policy Officer for Integral Ecology for the Maryknoll Office for Global Concerns in Washington, D.C. She focuses on environmental stewardship, the impacts of mining, and faith-based responses to ecological crises. Lisa often represents Maryknoll at international climate conferences and works on the U.S.-Venezuela relations. Lisa is a prominent voice in combining Catholic social teaching with climate action and representing the intersection of environmental issues and social justice. Lisa served as a Maryknoll lay missioner with her family in Bolivia and Venezuela for 20 years. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Anne. I am really excited to be here. And as soon as I get my PowerPoint up, I'll be more excited. This is always my challenge. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if it comes up. Do folks see the screen?
We do.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Now I need to how to move it forward, but we'll go to that next. It's really quite a privilege to be here with you all. I confess this is something I'm really excited about, and it's perhaps new to feel that excitement. I've been doing this work for about 4 years, and as many of you know, it's a frustrating, slow churn to try to get the world to do what it must to address climate change. But Santa Marta was a moment of hope for all of us. I'm just returning. I got back about 28 hours ago. I was 2 weeks in Colombia and then in Venezuela. So I'm still filled with that sense of hope. As you see here in the opening slide, this conference took place in a small city of Colombia that's on the ocean called Santa Marta. And it's actually a region of Colombia that is dedicated to fossil fuels. It's a port, actually, a coal port. And so it's hugely significant that this conference took place right in the heart of what is really the cause of our climate change problem. So just the place was a sign of hope that it would be willing to take place there. I'm going to share a little bit about the background, what led to this conference, and I'm also going to focus a lot on the participation of faith-based groups, religious organizations, and Rohan will speak more to the conference itself. And so that's how we're going to divide up our time here. And I'm going to try to go to my next slide. And of course, the photos are making it impossible to find. There we go. Okay. I think the people participating here, there's no need to convince you that climate change is real. Many of us are poised in working and living in regions where we feel that very acutely. We see what's happening. We see the changes to our world. We see the heat. We see the wildfires. We see the devastating impacts on people's health and on communities. And most of us know that the base cause of this is the burning of fossil fuels. Over 80% of the greenhouse gases that are causing climate change, that are causing biodiversity loss, are because of the burning of fossil fuels, which are oil, gas, and coal. So this is the focus, of course, of this conference. Try to turn the page. It's making it hard for some reason. I can't find the icon to turn it. Let's see. Here we go. The way the world has organized itself in recent decades to address the issue of climate change is through what we call the COPs. The COPs mean the Conference of the Parties, and that means the parties to a treaty that was created in 1992, a treaty to address the issue of climate change. And so countries came together 30 years ago, now 31 years ago, in Brazil, to decide to gather once a year to try to find ways together as a global community to address the issue of climate change. And so this process of the COPs, again, has been happening for 30 years. Unfortunately, in this 30 years, they never have addressed the root cause. What is the root cause of climate change? It's the burning of fossil fuels. So the term fossil fuels was not even in the language of the previous COPs, even in what we call the Paris Agreement that took place in 2015, when finally the world decided to have a specific commitment to keep temperature rise to 1.5 degrees centigrade. Even then, the term fossil fuels was never named. As a matter of fact, it wasn't named for the next 28 years, the next 28 COPs. It was finally at COP 28 in Dubai. I was there, as perhaps Rohan and many of us were, in which finally, at least, they named the word fossil fuels and called for a transition away from fossil fuels as part of the obvious way to address how to address the issue of climate change and correct this trajectory that we're on. But they just named it. They didn't really say how to do that. So we moved forward. There was COP 29, nothing happened. And then COP 30 there, which took place in Brazil, in the heart of the Amazon. There was tremendous expectation that finally here we're holding a COP where, much of the world's diversity regulation is happening, where people are suffering. The issue of fossil fuels will be addressed. But it wasn't. It wasn't addressed. And the picture I showed down at the bottom, that actually took place the second to the last day at COP 30. It was kind of a symbol for all of us. A fire took place, a fire at one of the little pavilions there, and took over the whole tent. And it was almost as though the world were saying, we're on fire. You need to address the issue of fossil fuels. And yet it didn't happen. The reason this obvious issue was never addressed is that the way these COPs are organized is by consensus. And one country can block the consensus of 196 other countries. And so that whole formula of moving forward, it became clear this is not allowing us to get anywhere. Um, this is just an image to kind of demonstrate how the cops are really not addressing, have not addressed the main issue, the main culprit. To the left, you see the cops, cop after cop, cop one, cop two, cop three, cop four. There's, many agreements. Each country must present its own plan of how to reduce its greenhouse gases. There's, multiple protocols, etc. And yet, as we see to the right, the main issue, the main culprit, the burning of fossil fuels, the regulation of that is never really addressed. So the final day of COP30 was really the most exciting day. And in a surprising way, there was a press conference. Colombia and the Netherlands called a press conference the last day. And there they announced that they would be calling for a conference for the transition away from fossil fuels. And the idea behind this was, you know what? We're not going to keep just sticking to this one format. We will continue this, but as certain countries, fossil fuel producing countries, block the path away, we're going to call for what we call a conference of the willing. There's enough of us. There were 80 countries that signed an agreement at COP30 to try to get fossil fuel regulation out of the official documents. And so they said, let's have a conference in which those of us who are willing talk about how do we do this? Not if, but how do we do this? And so that announcement met with tremendous enthusiasm. Here's the moment where they're announcing that conference. This was announced in November of 2025. And indeed, the planning of the conference, something totally outside the framework of the United Nations, what they call the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This was something organized by the countries of Colombia and the Netherlands. There was no specific budget from the UN from it. There was no specific, determination how it would be. They were the ones to determine how this format would take place. And so they announced this and brought it together. And just want to show this image of these are the two environmental ministers, the one to the left from Colombia, Irene Vélez, and the one to the right from the Netherlands. I have a hard time pronouncing her name, Stijntje van Veldhoven, embracing at the beginning of the conference in Santa Marta. And I just think that's just such a symbol. Two women, environmental ministers, making this happen. And I just want to share these two quotes, one from each of them. Irene said, "We decided not to resign ourselves to an economy built on the destruction of life. The transition away from fossil fuels could no longer remain a slogan, but must become a concrete political and collective endeavor." And then the quote to the right, if I could move these photos over, by the environmental minister of the Netherlands. She said, "The transition is not just about energy. It's about building a new economy that empowers communities." And so again, the power of these countries coming together to make this conference happen. So indeed, it happened. 57 countries showed up in Santa Marta. And as you'll see on the bottom little strip there, the countries represented over a third of the world economy, over a third of the world's energy demand, and over 20% of the fossil fuel supply, those providing fossil fuel production. And so you can see there were some small countries, but some major countries, many European countries, and the EU was present as well. And so it was just exciting to see the fact that 57 countries decided to show up and say, let's find a way to move forward. The conference itself was a week of different kind of mini conferences. There were pre-conferences, and that's really the ones where I took place, both Rohan and I. The final 2 days were the actual high-level summit. That was very limited, but there was many events, many different pre-events, and a couple that I'll mention. There was a conference of climate scientists. Over 400 climate scientists met prior to the event, and came out with a lot of very specific recommendations. You'll see to the top right, there was an indigenous conference.
I'm going over to Weber.
Um,
No, it sounds like her voice. Her name is Lisa Sullivan. She's a
Somebody needs to mute. I'm not sure. It just says, oh, there we go. Thanks. The Indigenous conference that was held, some of us were also invited to visit this, some Indigenous spiritual leaders of the Arawak Indigenous community. Their spiritual leaders are called the Mamos. And you'll see them, this picture, this was not a picture I took, but we did go to an area, which is a sacred triangle between the ocean and a snow-capped peak. So there's a very incredible spiritual energy that is guarded there between these two, the high water, the high ice of the mountain and the low Caribbean Ocean. And just that it's the place in the world where there's the least distance between sea level and the height of a mountain that has snow perpetually on it. And so these Indigenous leaders were very much invited to be, not only have their own conference, to be part of the conference itself and to meet with participants. And one thing that really struck me, in their area, there is coal development. It's a fossil fuel area. And they spoke to us and said, for us, oil, it's not, we're not going to speak terribly of it. It's not an evil. It's the blood of our mothers. And they said, and yet therefore we respect it and we leave it where it is. We don't cut up in the veins of the blood of our mothers. And so fossil fuels need to be left where they are. So anyway, so these are, again, some of the pre-conferences. There was also two different people summits. The bottom photo is from a march that we had as well. And so there was quite a diverse participation. I'd say with a strong participation, mostly from Latin America, but from other parts of the world as well in this People's Conference. I want to speak to the role of faith groups and the incredible, growing, powerful participation that we're seeing in these international climate spaces. And much of this we really saw the strength, the building of it taking place at COP30. COP30 again was in Brazil last November, and leading up to COP30, the bishops, the cardinals, heads of the Catholic Church in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, wrote a really extraordinary document. If you have a chance, please read it. It's a letter of the Global South Church on climate. And it's a call for climate justice in the common home. And a really beautiful part of that document was that all three of these cardinals, the presidents of the Asia, Africa, Latin American conferences, came and participated. Rohan and I know well because we organized a conference when they were present. But they also presented their document to the presidency of COP30. And so this is really following Pope Francis's call to say, we need to do all we can as individuals, but time is too short. So we really need to act collectively, and the church needs to engage in these collective instances where we're trying to address climate change. And so not only did these cardinals heed that call, but there were over 30 bishops and hundreds of Catholic organizations at COP30. And there was just an amazing participation of the Catholic population in Brazil. They had spent a year in every parish and every diocese trying to understand what COP was all about and climate change, et cetera, NDCs. And so just to see the participation from the base of faith groups was really quite extraordinary at COP30. And that really carried forward to this conference, the Santa Marta Conference. The same group of cardinals, the heads of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, wrote a second document. This document specifically about fossil fuels. And you can see that there it is. It's called the Manifesto of the Churches of the Global South for Our Common Home. And so they put out this document shortly before Santa Marta. It's a beautiful document. It's not long at all. I invite you to afterwards we'll share the link and the follow-up. But two things that they really were clear in calling for. One was that their affirmation of what's called the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is calling on countries to sign a treaty to commit themselves to halt the production of fossil fuels, to transition away from that. And so the call for the support for this treaty was really important in this document. And their second really important call was the issue of debt. That debt that is strapping so many countries, especially of the global south, should be transferred into those funds, should be transferred into climate finance to allow countries who have not caused climate change, but who are suffering from climate change, to be able to address the changes, the transition they need. So again, this is a beautiful document. I'm just going to read this one piece. It says, "We're ready to listen to the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. We invite all people of goodwill to join a historic coalition between North and South to protect our common home. Time is short, but hope mobilizes us. A world free of fossil fuels, just and at peace, is possible and necessary." So I'm going to repeat that last phrase. I actually had it made on a bookmark. I want to have it on a t-shirt. We need to memorize this. A world free of fossil fuels, just and at peace, is possible and necessary. And so the fact that the leaders of our Catholic Church are clearly stating that is very powerful. So again, this is from the document from the Global South churches. It was also supported by the bishops of Europe and of Oceania. And so that was very present in the Santa Marta Conference. In addition, there were a lot of people of faith, different spiritualities present at Santa Marta. And many of us began to connect in January, early February, and to realize we need to be present. We need to be present at this conference. We need to bring the insights of our faith. We need to bring the reaches of our faith communities to this important conference. And so we began to meet once a week on Friday for many weeks, perhaps several months. It was both grassroots groups, it was Buddhist groups, Mennonite groups, Baptist groups, World Council of Churches. And then little by little, the Catholic groups began to come in as well. At first, there was a kind of a suspicion, are we really on the same page? And then finally, we realized, the power of fossil fuel companies is immense. They would love to see us divided. We need to come together. And so there was a process over the months of coming together, completely together as one faith voice to say, what can we do? How can we engage in this? And so out of that process leading up to to this conference in Santa Marta, collectively, we wrote a really beautiful statement. And so a one-day faith gathering was held, one of the first days of the conference in Santa Marta. I think several hundred people of faith gathered. And at the end, leaders of the different organizations that were involved were invited to sign. And so here's an image both of one of the groups meeting and as well as the moment of signing. And then this document at that very moment was turned over to the Fossil Fuel Treaty Initiative, the woman who had started that, Sebra. She was invited to receive the document, and because a big part of this document was support again for this treaty, the Fossil Fuel Treaty. I'm just going to share a few of the quotes from that document. Again, it was something that was written as a collective, and so I think it's really important to hear. One of the quotes is, "We've inherited from our ancestors a living earth populated by deeply interconnected beings, minerals, plants, animals, and people that are in crisis or facing mass extinction. We recognize that the climate crisis facing the planet is not only an environmental problem, but a profoundly spiritual, ethical, and moral crisis, demanding not only economic restructuring, but also cultural transformation. From this conviction, we affirm that in addition to technical adjustments and agreements between governments, the just transition needs to transform the way we relate to Earth and to one another." And so I think what is so important as faith groups is the eyes with which we see this as God's creation. And we recognize, again, as they say, it's not just a technical problem, it's a moral and ethical problem. True transformation begins in the human heart and in connection with community. Without this inner cultural and spiritual conversion, no policy will be enough. There's no climate justice without social justice. To deny this is to accelerate the impacts of the climate crisis that are already disproportionately affecting the most vulnerable communities. Changing the energy source without transforming the power structure is a paper transition, which continues to sacrifice territories in the name of progress. It masks the collapse of ecosystems and creates new victims. And so these are just pieces of a document that was later shared with the official organizers of the conference. There was a lot of dialogue between the faith groups and the Colombian government. And an agreement was reached to elect 4 representatives of the faith community to attend the high-level summit. And the 4 that we elected were 4 women. And so that was very powerful to see 4 women leaders. 2 of them were Catholic, the others were of other faiths. And they participated fully in the high-level summit alongside of ministers, alongside of others. There were also 2 representatives of the Holy See allowed to participate at the high-level summit, since the Holy See is actually an official party to the UNFCCC, the UN Climate Change Conference. So just to share these are some of the things that came out of that interfaith summit. Just to kind of end with the faith piece, out of a lot of this engagement of faith groups in this summit and leading up to it, there's a coalition that's been created. It's called Faiths for a Fossil-Free Future. I call it F5. And the idea is that we collectively find ways within our own faiths to promote the transition from fossil fuels, whether that be as a faith leader signing, whether that be as a parish or a school, to sign this treaty, which is again calling for a transition from fossil fuels. There are 3 things that the treaty calls for. It calls to end all fossil fuel development immediately. Its second call is to phase out fossil fuel production equitably, with wealthy countries leading the way, right? Those who have caused climate change through burning of fossil fuels need to be the first to transition away, while other countries which are still developing, hardly have electricities, are last in line. And number 3, to implement a just transition to renewable energy for all, giving priorities to workers and communities. So this call to support the fossil fuel treaty, that faiths are promoting this again, is something I really invite all of you all to consider. There's a link, there's a website. It's easy to sign as an individual or as a faith leader or as an institution. There's also some really exciting things happening. And I have to admit, I see in the people participating, one of my favorite people, Joe from Florida, Joe I know from Florida, who is working to get the Florida legislature to pass the fossil fuel treaty, and working has been for years with faith groups, with Pax Christi, but with other parishes and dioceses, et cetera. And that's another amazing thing that we can do, is to how do we find ways for our towns, our cities, our institutions to sign on to this treaty. So there's power in what we can do using our faith to contribute to this. I'm going to end with this before I pass it to Rohan. This is really what I think the Santa Marta conference was all about. Let's see if I can move the picture at the top so I can read it myself. There we go. What I see coming out of Santa Marta is a really new climate multilateralism. It's a coalition of the willing. Again, the COPs have been these, really important annual meetings of the UN where we're trying to address this problem, but it can be stopped by any, vetoed by any one country. And so let's spend that energy looking at what we can do, those of us who know we need to make this transition. And so that was the call of Santa Marta. Again, Rohan will explain more how the actual conference unfolded and the results, but I think the overarching call to a new kind of multilateralism of the willing, a new kind of multilateralism of faith groups, as we saw, a new multilateralism of grassroots. It's a time to experiment. We're not going to give up on multilateralism. We're going to rebuild new ways. And so Santa Marta took us from deadlock to action, as the picture shows. It was the catalyst, and the reason is we all want and dream of a sustainable future. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rohan to lead us into what the conference itself was like and what came out of it. And I'm glad to answer questions afterwards.
Before Rohan takes over, we want to thank you, Lisa, for bringing this to our consciousness. And it's obvious to see why you have come back with so much hope and faith in what is possible for us into the future. And at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. And so we'll come back to you at that point. I also was able to put a link for the faith group that Lisa just mentioned into the chat. And so if you're looking for it, you can find it there. And so thank you for sharing with us. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Father Rohan Dominic. He has been for the last 9 years the coordinator of the Claritin team to the United Nations at the New York headquarters. He previously served as the regional superior of the Claritins in Sri Lanka and worked across Asia. He has been striving to raise awareness to action within the Catholic world. Father Dominic believes the Church must go beyond moral exhortation and take an active role in shaping global climate policy. He strives to bring pastoral and compassion and advocacy experience to the global climate discourse. So welcome to you, Father Rohan Dominic.
And he's muted.
Yeah.
Rohan, my friend, you were muted.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry for that. And I'm happy to be with you all. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. First of all, thank you, Anne and the Dominican Leadership Conference, for giving me this opportunity to share this unique experience with you all. I'm also very much excited to share this experience because this is a unique experience. I've been here at the United Nations, working with United Nations for last 9 years, and I attended several forums, UN conferences. But this is totally a different one because all those who are present, the governments, the different stakeholders, the scientists, the academics, and everyone, the full participants are all with one mind. There was no opposition or different views, but everyone had the same view of transitioning away from fossil fuel. So it is a conference of persons of same mind. So that way that the conference was unique, and I'm happy to share this experience with you. And thank you, Lisa, for you have shown why fossil fuel world is necessary. And you also given a powerful overview of the crisis and our faith response. For my part, I will focus on the conference itself, the process, the outcomes, and the future directions of the global effort to transition away from fossil fuel. So we will see what happened there and what it means for our ministries and advocacy. Yeah, we have already Lisa has mentioned about this, the conference. There were 57 countries present, 27 are ministers or ambassador level, and there were over 1,300, 1,300 civil society participants. The main difference of this conference was the major shift from debating whether to phase out of fossil fuel to determining how to do it, the solutions, how fast we can do it, how justly, quickly, and with financing. So this was the major discussion at this conference. And Lisa has already given us the background of now this phasing out of fossil fuel. As Lisa mentioned that in Paris 2015, there was no mention about fossil fuel. But in Glasgow in 2021 at COP26, first time fossil fuel text was introduced and phase down of coal, only coal, not on oil or gas. So if you see what made this shift was, there were many factors were there, but the main one was the science. Science got louder and more specific during this time. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports become increasingly direct. And the report says that 80 percentage, now if you, yeah, by 80 percentage of reduce of coal and oil and gas by 50 percentage by 2030, the global warming will not never come to 1.5 centigrade. Then Dubai in 2023, COP30, spoke first time about transitioning away from fossil fuel. And then Belém, COP30, tried to bring a roadmap text for this, this issue, but it was not possible. So Colombia and Netherlands volunteered to host this transitioning away from fossil fuel conference. Then Santa Marta conference took place, and now the ISA on COP31 in Antalya in Turkey, that which will the COP31 will take place in November, and then the second TAF2 conference in Tuvalu in 2027. There was a question why Santa Marta was chosen for this conference. Santa Marta gives a powerful message because Santa Marta is one of the Colombia's major coal exporting port cities. So the conference was held inside the fossil fuel economy. And it was deliberate and powerful choice. Then the co-hosts, both Colombia and Netherlands, they have also long fossil fuel histories. Colombia as a coal producer and Netherlands as the birthplace of Shell. So the choosing of Santa Marta itself has a powerful message. Then if you see the preparation for the conference, it is also, once again, it is unique. It is not just a 2-day conference of the leaders. the ministers or the government teams. But there was a long process engaging all stakeholders and multi-step participatory process. First, all those who were shown interest to participate in this conference were asked to give written submissions. So there were around 600 plus submissions for this conference from governments, from scientists, from indigenous people, from different stakeholders. Second phase was the global online dialogue. All those who were now shown interest were divided into 20 plus groups, and there were online dialogues to get the view of all the stakeholders. The third phase was during Santa Marta conference. There were 14 stakeholder chapters took place of different stakeholder groups. So everyone was given an opportunity to participate and to speak. And the outcome was that from these different phases of participation, it was the official organizers requested each chapter to come out with a priority solution and to choose spokespersons for the high-level segment. So it is a fully participatory process. And during the Santa Marta conference, again, as I was saying, that it's not just the 2-day conference of the high-level participants, but also there was a preparation for that. 24th and 25th, official venue, there were conference of the academics. At the civil society, there were different chapters met in different places. Lisa and myself, we were there with the social movements and faith-based groups. And on April 26, officially, the parliamentarians met. And there was also People's Assembly organized by the organizers to give an opportunity for all those participants who were not attending in different sectoral meetings. Then at the civil society level also, there was a People's Summit took place on April 26, bringing together all the different stakeholders, different groups to come out with a final resolution. And there was also People's March on that day. And 27th, all those who were chosen, the 3 or more representatives of each different sectors or different chapters, altogether 14, they were together. They brought their priority solutions and the position paper, and they finalized their presentation for the high-level segment. All the position papers, the contributions of all the stakeholders are all placed at in the website of the conference. If you visit this website, you can get all the inputs of all the stakeholders. The People's Summit is also a major event during the conference. The People's Summit declaration was also submitted at the high-level forum. It brought over 1,000 organizations, local and international, together to participate in an equal manner. And then we are able to make this summit declaration. And this time too, as Lisa was telling, that the faith is also at the center of the conference. The Catholic Church's involvement is far high in this conference than any other climate change conferences. There were official delegations and then special moments, and especially on one afternoon on Sunday, there was a Catholic Action Day where all the Catholic participants participated in the Eucharistic celebration. After that, had the meeting together and committed to this cause. And now, what are the outcomes of this conference? There are 5 key messages. The transition away from fossil fuel is no longer a question. The question is how, not if, but how. The second is fossil fuel are not only a climate issue, but it's also an economic security and justice issue. Then it's not just an energy transition, but a just transition. It must put people, workers, indigenous people, and vulnerable communities at the center of the transition. It's also said that the existing global finance and the trade system must change. And the conference also created a new political space, as Lisa was mentioning. Now it is called Coalition of Frontliners. Initially, the countries that were joined together were called Coalition of Willing, and then they called themselves Coalition of Doers. Now, this coalition is identified as Coalition of Frontliners. Some special things that happened at the conference. Now, the countries like Vanuatu, Palau, Panama, and Malawi, Ghana, they were really calling for a new legal framework or a treaty based on the ICJ advisory opinion on the rights of nature. And there were also countries like Nigeria and other countries that are producing fossil fuel. No, they advocated phase down, not phase out. And there are countries of EU, Germany, France, Brazil, Australia, and Norway. They were already presenting their fossil fuel phase out map. Especially France was very clear in their presentation. By 2030, no more coal. 2040 oil, and 2050 total phase out of fossil fuel. And the civil society and indigenous people, the youth also demanded right-based transition. So just a word on just transition. Now, this is also very much important because it is not just a energy transition that is expected, but a total just transition. So this means that the workers have to be retrained. Their incomes support must be given. New job guarantees must be given when there is a transition. The frontline and indigenous committee also has to be taken very serious because they are the one affecting by all the fossil fuel industry. Then fossil fuel dependent economies also need some kind of assurance to come out of that. And then youth and future generations also were demanding intergenerational equity. The science also once again took the heart of, mentioned as the heart of the transition, to listen to the science. So a new science panel for global energy transition was established, and over 5,000 scholars endorsed it. And uh, the key function of this panel is to map barriers to transition sectors and identifies policy gaps and provide independent evidence base for transition away from fossil fuel work stream. So they are expected to present their roadmap for power and transport sectors during the SB subsidiary bodies meeting next month, in June, the next week, SB 64 at Bonn next month. And they will also present a report during COP 31. So the once again the outcomes were the second transitioning away from fossil fuel conference will take place in Tuvalu, and it will be co-hosted by Tuvalu and Ireland. Then, as I said, that the scientific panel is established, and they also established 3 interlinked work streams. Then they also, this conference also emphasized the subsidy transparency. Then the outcome of the conference will be linked to UNFCCC and COP 31. It is not a parallel conference, and it will continue as parallel body, but to link and to bring this experience and resolutions to the main discussion, main table. So it will be presented at COP 31. And this conference also given a new model, and it's called Santa Marta Psychology. A safe, open, inclusive space for all ministers, indigenous leaders, youth, union, and faith communities to be together. Most of the discussions were took place in the form of group discussions, not making statements. So that way, this conference had created a new form of functioning. Then there's just one word on fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. This is one of the most spoken the issue before the conference. Every stakeholder groups were insisting on this treaty. But at Santa Marta, some of the countries were called for such a treaty. There was a growing coalition of different countries to endorse this treaty. But it was only on initial discussion level at Santa Marta, and probably it will be good deeper discussions in the upcoming conferences. The key tensions in the conference, the first of all, the question of phasing out and phase down. So some of the countries were insisting on phase down only. So this is one of the things that they need to, consensus need to be created. Then another issue was whether this the treaty, the legally binding treaty, whether it's going as a binding one or a voluntary one. Then the third issue was speed versus justice. Faster transition timelines risk leaving the workers and fossil fuel dependent economies behind. So whether speed or justice. Then other issue was finance. Again, the question of what will the nature of this finance? Is it a grant or a loan? Then how to integrate civil society into the whole picture. So what is next? So beyond Santa Mata, the next steps is not to go for broader agenda. No? So this will be presented at SB 64 Bonn in June. Then again, the regional climate week that will take place in Baku, September 2026. So there will be an interim report will be presented by the different work streams. Then the pre-COP that is recently introduced before COP 31, which is to take place in Fiji in October 2026. And there they are planning to present early roadmap. Then in Antalya in Turkey, COP 31, secure recognition for these outputs of the conference. Then to go for review and deepening in the next conference. So transitioning away from fossil fuel one is just the beginning of a long-term transition process for climate justice, intergenerational responsibility, and ethics and solidarity. Now, what can we do as religious congregations or as faith-based organization? We can, we can do several things. Now we have to get involved in this, just not as remain as observers or only doing discussions on this important issue. But first of all, yeah, many of us are involved in UN advocacy. So there's a possibility to deepen our prophetic advocacy at the UN. We can also green our institutions. Then fossil fuel divestment, to see where our investments are going on. And then also to have formation ecological conversion in our formation, in our ministries. Then stand with the vulnerable. Also to build interfaith coalitions. And it's the same call for the Dominican leadership also, to continue with this process, get involved so that these things will never stay alone in papers, but to become a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohan, for bringing such a full picture of that experience to us. And we look forward to people having the opportunity to ask you to perhaps go deeper about some of the questions. If you have questions, we ask that you raise your hand if you're able, or to put it into the chat if you're not able to use the raise your hand function. One of the questions that I have, Rohan, is that it seems like they were able to get a tremendous amount of work done in what seems to be a very short time. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is true, because it was decided only in December to have this conference, and they have no clue of how to go about. It's the first time they are meeting and with a different setup. So it took some time to design the whole process, but it became a very successful one at the end. There was lots of participation and then interest among the countries who are now willing to participate, and also many different stakeholders.
Do you anticipate that at the next phase out conference that there'll be more countries that are joining that were not participating at this time?
The possibility is there. No, that now that's why they are going to discuss in SB 64 next month, and then continue during different preparations summits for COP 30, no, 31 in Baku and in Fiji. So these inputs from these groups may attract many countries, now, especially those who are still weighing, now. But the big question is the big countries, the polluters, how to convince them is the big question there.
Margaret, do you have a question?
Yes, in reference to the countries who were not there, could Lisa or Rohan talk about why they were not there? I heard it was only through invitation. So why were they not there, and or what is the significance of them being not there?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and speak a little, and Rohan may have more ideas, but it was clearly decided that this was not to be a conference about whether if to transition from fossil fuels, but how to do that. And so the criteria for inviting countries was those who had already made a clear commitment to the need to transition away from fossil fuels. The idea was not so much to come up with a lot of official declarations, but to share how to do that, share information. And as Rohan said, the way that the conference was carried out allowed for that much more than just the interchange, the sitting together of indigenous people with country ministers, et cetera. It was a whole new way of doing it. A whole new way for the UN. For many of us, it's kind of how we do things anyway, right? But I did read that this next round, I think they're going to be more open to trying to get a broader segment. Some countries that actually were kind of on board, bigger countries, perhaps such as China and India, were not invited, perhaps because they were such powerhouses. And so I think this time around, I think there's going to be a kind of a new set of criteria. But in general, they still want it to be of the willing, those who are willing to take this route. But there were powerhouses, the whole EU was there. France came out with a very, right before the conference, a very powerful statement, very powerful roadmap of how specifically they will transition. It gave the year they transition from coal, the year they transition from oil, so there were also some powerful economies, I would say. And again, I think the fact that a fossil fuel nation such as Colombia hosted this, I think, was a shout out to other fossil fuel nations. Nigeria was there, for example. 80% of its economy comes from fossil fuels, and yet they said we need to transition away. So, yeah. But I think there perhaps will be more at the second round. But it was extremely successful for being a first step.
Yeah, in Belém, there were only 27 countries opted not to participate in this conference last November. So it is called a coalition of willing. But in the conference, 57 countries participated. That's now that itself shows how this now the countries are really getting interested in joining the question of fossil fuel phasing out.
Do you think that the experience of the indigenous people at COP 30 influenced the heavy focus on inclusivity at this conference?
I think COP30 influenced in many ways. Unfortunately, people focus on the outcome of COP30, and as I said, because a few countries blocked positive things, it didn't look like there was a positive outcome, but the actual lead up to COP30, the actual inclusiveness of the indigenous community, the involvement of the Brazilian society preparing for this for a year, that was very powerful. And I think in general, hosting several climate change conferences in Latin America has been quite amazing because previous to this, there was the conference in Cali, Colombia for biodiversity, of course, then COP30 in Brazil, and now this one in Colombia. And I do think the Catholic Church has contributed immensely because of the clarity of Pope Francis. It's engaged the Catholic Church with the issue of climate change. And so that's engaged society. It's a very faithful society, Latin America. And so I think that fervor, that enthusiasm really carried over as well to Santa Marta. I also want to honor the Colombian government. I mean, um, and I need to say there's elections in less than a week, and some of this may be thrown out the window if the current kind of tendencies lose, although they may or they may not. But the Colombian government has been very specific about honoring indigenous you know, sovereignty, wisdom, etc. And they just recently came out with a declaration of not exploiting the Amazon area. So I think some of it was specific to Colombia and their very positive attitude. But yes, I would say also it was a carryover from COP30. I hope that carries forward. The COPs now leave Latin America and jump to Europe, Eastern Europe. So how to bring that incredible engagement, I think, of the Catholic Church that brought that fervor in the past COPs is important to find ways. And I think sometimes just the language is a barrier. The COPs are always in English. And in Latin America, it's such a huge continent, Spanish and Portuguese, we can get along. We don't really need to learn English. And so I think there needs to be ways of bringing that fervor on board as we go forward.
And just one word on the involvement of civil society. This is normally when we attend UN conferences, UN summits, the civil society, no, at the end of the conference feel frustrated. Many of the things are not heard, and the most of the outcomes were not not as expected by the civil society. So here not only the indigenous communities but all the stakeholders were given an opportunity to express themselves and also to be part of the whole process. So that way the organizers have brought justice to all the participants, and the outcome was very acceptable to almost all the participants. Yes.
Other questions from the audience? I know that at COP30 that the presence of like the cardinals and the bishops was very predominant. Was that true at this conference, or was it were they present at this conference in that kind of way?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share and also invite Rohan. It was not as large, but there was a significant presence. There was the Latin America Catholic Church had its vice president, I'm blanking on his name, from Panama, who was extraordinary. And I'm sorry, I realized I missed a slide I had of the Catholic participation at this conference, which was really amazing, the enthusiasm. But so they also sent a representative from the Holy See, two representatives, and that included from the nuncio's office as well as the bishop, a bishop of Colombia. So there were several bishops there, but it was not because the conference was meant to be smaller. So there was not as many from outside of Latin America. Yeah. But Rohan, maybe you want to add to that.
The thing is that the interest and participation of the Catholic Church is now increasing. It was not before COP30. COP30 was the decisive moment for the Catholic Church to get involved in this question. And now there's a kind of a, it's not organized, but informally the 3+ other conferences, no, the Global South conferences, as well as the Europe and uh, the
Oceania.
Oceania. Yeah, both of them are also getting involved. Now we need to bring the US Bishops Conference also in this picture, though. Although Canada is already getting involved. So the interest is there and participation is also there. And more interaction is taking place among the Catholic actors. There is also a group called Network of Catholic Environment and Climate Actors, NCCEA. This is becoming a stronger body, coordinating among all the Catholic actors and also bringing different church leaders into the UN climate change conferences. Otherwise, it's only Holy See. And Holy See, most of the time, they don't speak much, no, as as a member state or a observer state, they remain as a official parties and not partners, but participants, but they are not contributing much. But this new initiative of the NCCA is changing the Catholic participation in the climate change conferences.
I just want to affirm of what Rohan said. You know, we are seeing this incredible groundswell of faith participation, especially the Catholic Church, but all of the faith groups, I would say. And you know, it was interesting to note, you know, in the UN system, there is no space for faith groups. You know, and as Rohan put, even in this leading up to this conference, there was no specific faith space. There was, you know, indigenous youth, unions, etc. And yet this growing voice of faith groups, I think, is being recognized more and more by the whole UN system, UNFCCC, and to the point where prior to the conference, there was no space for participation of faith people at the high level segment. But because of this growing fervor, this growing participation, they ended up inviting 4 representatives, which I mentioned again were 4 women. And so I think there's a growing awareness of the role of faith groups. You know, it's what I often speak to is that we talk about the tipping points, the negative tipping points of climate change. You know, when will the Amazon, you know, turn into a desert, or the ice melt, the ice in Antarctica melt, and yet we need to think about what are the positive tipping points that are going to tip us to know what we must do to bring about the changes. And I think faith groups are really an incredible part of that. And I think there's a recognition, you know, these are groups, we have no vested interest in this. It's because we care for God's creation, right? And the reach, the spread of faith groups is so immense. And so I think there's an excitement in realizing the potential of that engagement. But again, it's not just at this global level, it's at every single level. And again, that's why I mentioned both the possibility of signing the Faith for Fossil-Free Future statement, bringing that to your school, to your parish, bringing the idea of the treaty, such as they're doing, Joe is doing in Florida. So I think from all levels, we need to find how to be more active as faith groups in this.
Well, Lisa and Rohan, we want to thank you very much for you being able to open our eyes and our hearts to some of the transformational work that happened. And I think giving us a hope that as we move into this whole new cycle of COP31, that we can have other outcomes, and that these 56 countries had the opportunity to really show us perhaps a way forward that hadn't been possible prior to this. So thank you for bringing that to us. For all of you that registered, you will be receiving the recording, and we will also share the resources that if you've been paying attention to the chat, you know that a number of different links have been placed into the chat, and we'll make sure that you receive all of those resources. And we encourage you to sign on to the fossil fuel opportunity that Lisa has presented to us, because that is one of the strongest actions that each of us can take individually. And then if we bring that to the groups and our families that we're connected to, it really has the potential of being able to move things forward. So thank you very much for being with us, and we look forward to future opportunities to see you.
Thank you.